Right, make me high.
I really hope that didn't make it into the video. It has started now.
It'll just be an audio problem, don't worry.
Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna call it. So,
There's context for that, people, don't worry.
two protagonist swaps that will be going on are involving advanced warfare from Call of Duty and a actual little known gem called Bulletstorm, created back I think right after Gears 3 or before Gears 3 came out.
Probably after, because it was made by at least People Can Fly and I think Epic Games,
Yes.
which was the creators for Gears of War at the time.
Yes, and that is the coalition.
Yes. So with this scenario, we're first going to be doing, well, we'll point out that, well, it is a protagonist swap, but we have, Zim and I have kind of realized this, that for some genres, there are different ways that we're going to be doing the protagonists because of the way the games are made.
Yes.
Because there's sometimes, obviously, this happens a lot in protagonist swaps in general. We contrive scenarios, we move them around. And for shooters, this is especially like a thing because shooter characters, if you may have noticed, are very reliant on a lot of things like squad mates, ammo, equipment. They're not really like, your traditional superhuman characters. So we have to make certain special versions of the protagonist swap.
Yes.
One being the squad swap. And that is where we take a group of people and swap them with another group of people. In this case, we're taking Grayson Hunt, his robot cyborg friend Ishii, and Trishka, the girl he meets, the last member of the Final Echo in Bulletstorm, and three characters that are basically on the cover, and swapping them with three individuals from the Advanced Warfare COD game, Jack Mitchell, Ilona, and Gideon. And they will basically be taking their place. Grayson will be taking Mitchell's place. What's his face? Again, oh my god, I somehow forgot his name. Ishii will be taking Gideon's place, and Trishka will be taking Alona's place. So this is an interesting scenario. Well, also protagonist swap. So we have the same stats, speed, strength, all that stuff. Though it is worth noting that for shooting characters, since they don't have a lot of superpowers, they're actually mostly going to be the same. The main differences is just going to be equipment and like experience. So going forward, it's going to start with like them basically getting yeeted out of their universes, and they're going to be put into the start of the game, which is not actually in the first mission when the United States Marine Corps deploys into South Korea to stop the North Koreans. It's actually in the 6 months prior, because the first cutscene opens with Jack Mitchell stating that he was in 6 months of basic, or at least 6 months of Marine training with Will, who is the son of Jonathan Irons, the main antagonist of the game. So Grayson is going to be swapped with Mitchell and basically get the training with the exosuits and weapons in Advanced Warfare, and he'll be dropped in there for 6 months. We'll say that he gets in there because he's brought in with an alibi from the omniscient narrator, proper background and everything, completely fabricated, of course, with a goal to join the Marines. And the omniscient narrator will basically tell him and his crew that your goal is to survive in this encounter and eliminate the next, basically survive in this counter over a long period of time and eliminate the next major threat to the world, or the next few major threats to the world. You will know when you're done when you have basically been pulled from this world. I say it like that because technically there are multiple threats, because you have to deal with the KVA, the Hades, and Atlas Corporation, whatnot. Whatever. Point is that Trishka, we'll say that Trishka and what's his fucking name? Ishii are I keep forgetting Ishii's name. Sorry. They're gonna be deployed somewhere into some like while Grayson's training in basic with Will, they're going to be deployed somewhere into some like third world country and right in the middle of some Atlas operation and just start wiping out a bunch of like enemy soldiers from the KVA. And the Atlas operatives are going to show up right as they're doing this and see them standing over like hundreds of soldiers, killing them. And it's going to wonder, wow, that's amazing. And it's like, yeah, we were on our way to meet the Atlas Corporation. We actually, do you have any idea where they were? We were poaching for a job. And it's like, oh, well, we're some of their operatives. So how convenient that you happen to be looking for us. Yeah. I'm sorry. What did you say?
No, it's just offering them the welcome aboard.
Yeah, and after they do this, this firefight basically sets up the. This isn't happening in the campaign. We're just making this up, but basically, this firefight sets up an operation for the Atlas operatives to capture another target they have, which leads to more mission success and more opportunities, more job opportunities opening up in the region. So they end up recommending these two to Jonathan Irons, and then he ends up making them Atlas operatives around the same time. So they end up just rising through the ranks over the 6 month time skip, along with Grayson Hunt in the Marines. And then the first mission begins after the 6 month time skip. They get sent into Korea because, if you recall, in the first mission, North Korea finally decides to invade South Korea, and then U.S. Marines basically deploy themselves from drop pods 20,000 feet in the air into South Korea.
Yes.
And they just basically make their way there with he would make their way there with Will, Cormac, your commander, and then some other dude. So for this scenario, he basically has most of the weapons that he gets from Advanced Warfare, which are just your standard assault rifles and tactical rifles. We'll say that for the first mission, he's not going to get access to his full arsenal because technically he's in the UNS military, and I don't think he'd be able to smuggle that in there. However, that is not going to be a problem for the second mission when he starts working for the Atlas Corporation, because they're more privatized. Maybe they'll allow a more customized loadout. But the Marines are very strict, so that's not going to fly with them. So he's just going to go rolling through the streets like the rest of them, moving from checkpoint to checkpoint, basically blowing enemies away. Honestly, in the actual campaign, they just have standard body armor. They can basically be pierced by like any conventional weapons. You've seen this stuff in the COD game. Like,
Yes.
COD soldiers don't usually wear like any special armor. It's usually only like juggernauts or like really heavily armored soldiers that's like a problem with.
Yes. And I believe this first mission, you're just fighting normal soldiers, right? You're not fighting any special.
Yeah, like I don't even think they have exosuits. Honestly, like some of them will in later campaigns, but they're just normal dudes. So you're just gonna blow them away. And then of course Grayson gets access to all of the equipment that they have, which means he gets tactical variables and tactical lethals. So if you're unfamiliar, in Advanced Warfare, they have what's known as the variable grenade, which is a grenade that is apparently so advanced it has the ability to switch between 3 different types of grenades on the fly. So for lethals, they can be a frag, a simtex, or a contact grenade. So they can either stick to you and explode, cook and then explode, or they can explode on contact. Or they have tactical ones which can just track your position, like well, yeah, actually no, wait, they don't have syntax. That's my bad. It's a tracking grenade drone that like hovers over your position and goes flying to you. For tactical ones, they have flashbangs or like stun grenades, EMPs, and then threat grenades. And threat grenades are just something that you throw into the air and it basically pings anything that your visor deems to be a threat to you and your teammates. And you and your teammates can see it, but the enemy apparently cannot. Because at some point in the campaign, you do this inside of like a safe house. And even though it covers the entire safe house, none of the enemies react to it. They don't even know that you threat grenaded them. So it is only visible to the HUD of your soldier.
Incredibly useful.
It is incredibly useful and disgustingly broken because it also outlines their body in a bright red flash and it stays on them for like a good 10 to 15 seconds. And it covers everything in like a 20 by 20 meter radius. And you have like 4 to 6 of these things, depending on your full like inventory. You can also put sights on your weapons that have these overlays, which he can also pick up in battle because some characters do actually have access to. Some enemies will just have like these things. So yeah, he's just gonna steamroll through most of these enemies from section to section until they get out into the streets. They're gonna deal with a nano swarm, but like through most of this campaign mission, Cormac will just yell at you to do something because he's also your squad commander. So he'll just yell at Grayson, like, "Hey, get on that tank," and that's exactly what Grayson's gonna do. And then Grayson's just gonna blow them to smithereens. I would also like to point out that technically, since Grayson has his equipment, one of the things that he'll be able to bring into the Marines is his leash. So, if you're unfamiliar, in Bulletstorm, you have this thing called the leash, which is an instinct moderated weapon, or an instinct munitions weapon. It literally uses your instinct as a pile of ammunition, as like a basis to, I guess, use the target. And what it does is it essentially throws a pile of energy at someone, like a tether, and then pulls them into the air in slow motion. And then you could just basically shoot them out of the air, midair, for skillful kills and also just to kill them.
Oh, so
So if they're behind,
they just need to flick their wrist or something, it just comes out then.
you literally that. It also has something called the thumper, where you hold it on a position or in a location, hold it for a second, and it shoots an energy ball out of where the tether is, hits the ground, and it shockwaves everything in the area via about, again, a 40-meter radius in every direction, and all the enemies in that radius go flying into the air and are suspended and stuck in the air for a good 5 or 6 seconds. And he has about half a dozen of these on him at like full inventory.
That sounds incredibly
So it's
useful.
like, imagine Dante's DT from the reboot. That's what it does. Uh,
But
and
that
I
has
guess
the issue, right? You can't do multiple people at once.
it can hit multiple people at once. The tether doesn't even need to be aimed at someone.
That's silly.
Yeah, well, it needs to be aimed at a location specifically. Well, just because like the regular tether has to grab someone, but the thumper does not, because you just have to hold it.
Ah, I see.
And it can extend to like 20-30 meters. There's times where you're falling off the side of like a dam and you can grab people out of vultures, which are literally those games equivalent of copters in the air, and just send them flying down. So yeah, he's just gonna swing people across the map, kick them. I mean, granted, he doesn't have any of his superhuman like strength outside of the exosuit, because he's technically nerfed in this scenario, because Grayson is a lot stronger than Mitchell is, even with the exosuit, with a lot of his feats, because he could like kick down steel doors and shit like that with his bare hands. But that doesn't matter here, because Jack Mitchell made it through with like way less powers and abilities, and he was just sweeping people. And Jack Mitchell didn't have a leash that could pull people out of cover.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Jack Mitchell do this mainly because of the exosuit? So, like, are you saying they're comparable to the exosuit?
No. I'm
All right,
saying
because
Grayson Hunt is way stronger than any of the Atlas soldiers, even with the exosuits. He's way stronger with just his bare hands.
that
But
sounds
like
like wank.
in since he's in the protagonist swap, or I guess the SWAT swap, he and the rest of the people who are swapped in would just be the same level of strength as the protagonist. So he's actually been massively nerfed. But he also gets really sick equipment, so it's kind of like a really good trade-off. Also, he doesn't even need that strength, because again, people in the verse can kill some of these characters while still being not superhuman. So anyway, they get to the end of the mission, and they realize they basically have to go after. They're supposed to escort a demo team that has to blow up aerial launchers so that people can move into Seoul and take out the North Korean troops. Typical infantry tactic. Problem is that they get there, the demo team is dead, and you have to take up their launchers and basically obliterate the surface air missile thing before it moves. And this is where Will goes up there, plants a charge in the slot, and then the slot hatch closes on his hand. And this is typically where he dies, because he basically, his hand is caught in there and he can't get you out, and he pushes you off. So in this scenario, since Grayson is generally a little bit more observant than Mitchell is, he'll probably either leave when Will asks him to, or just move out of the way when he falls and hits the ground. So when that thing explodes, when it lifts off, his arm is not going to get cut off the way that Mitchell's did. Because in the campaign, what happens is that because you wait until the last moment to get out of there, uh, and Will pushes you off, it explodes, you get sent flying through the air, and when you land on the ground, a piece of shrapnel comes flying out and cuts your arm off your body. And that's how Mitchell ends up getting a prosthetic. That's also where the well, I'll get to that part in a second. But yeah, he basically Will dies there. We'll assume that the same, like let's say Grayson. We'll say Grayson gets a concussion to his head, but like his arm gets freed. Like he just basically has to go into the hospital afterwards. So he gets a med evac. Same thing as Jack Mitchell. Keep in mind that this is not alive because Jack Mitchell got his arm cut off and he was still able to play through the campaign. I think your concussion is significantly better, all things considered. Then we have the funeral where we get the iconic press F for respects, except now Grayson actually has a hand. So nothing lost. Jonathan Irons is still going to offer him. I'm sorry, what?
Oh no, I was just gonna say the iconic press F. Truly one of
Yes.
the most significant cultural moments of our generation.
Beautiful. Truly beautiful. Um, yeah, the Jonathan Irons is still going to offer him a job here because he's still bitter about Will dying, and he does claim that he saw a lot in Mitchell as a person, and that Will was specifically telling him about Mitchell during his time in the Marines. So I think he would have offered the job regardless. It's just that he had the perfect excuse when Will died and Mitchell was wounded. It was the perfect combination. It's just here he would still be giving him a job regardless. And Grayson will probably accept because, I mean, in this case, actually, we'll say he's still medically discharged. So yeah, he's basically out of a job, and he still has to be involved in the world stage. Then he ends up going through basic, second mission, which is I think it's not induction, it's the fuck is it called? Atlas. Yes, Atlas. That's just a test run. You basically go and test through a like one of those makeshift, obstacle courses that's made inside of like a giant room, and you basically practice going and saving like the president, breaching and clearing doors and stuff like that. It's just a testing thing, so he'll get through that pretty easily. He'll rendezvous with, I guess, Ishii. Though I don't know if Ishii will actually make it this far because technically Ishii is a cyborg, and that's not only going to draw a lot of attention to him, that's also going to screw him over in this scenario because he specifically needed a power battery recharge in the Bulletstorm thing, or he'll die. So I think he might actually just be dead at this point in the campaign.
That's a little dark. What do you mean? You can't think of any other way for him to charge up? Maybe stick some car batteries into
Well,
him?
he did just he did just go to some electrical plant and basically try to patch in, and it just ended up electrocuting him and then pushing him to full charge. He also used the fuel cells from like an AirPod, so I mean, I guess if he mentioned something to them, they could give him something, but like, sure.
I'm sure they could figure out a way to keep him alive if you can just jack into a random power station and come out with just a bit of a burn mark.
Well, it wasn't even the power state. He just absorbed all the electricity and the power. It didn't even have any negative effects on him.
I'm sure
Like it dying due to depowering was more of a threat than being electrocuted by the field.
Then yeah, something tells me they'll be able to find a way to keep him alive, so we can keep the squad together.
Okay, fine. Then Atlas is gonna be fine. He'll just be basically training with Ishii, and he'll run into Trishka because she's also there at the gun course for a little bit, taking Alona's place. Then you have Traffic, which I believe you end up after your first mission. This is about 4 months later, after 4 months of training. You have to rescue the Nigerian prime minister from the KVA, which is some global terrorist organization. Um, So in this scenario, you get access to like mag grips, riot shields, and overdrive and stuff like that. You basically get to you just go on like this, I guess this op where you just you have access to like a drone that observe like a little insect drone that just observes where you need to go inside of a building, and then you cut your way across the street, go inside, and use the wonderful just like in the main campaign, he's going to clear this pretty easily using the mute charges. He'll just break into the room with no sound at all, because if you recall, mute charges in advanced warfare are basically able to blow open an entire wall in a building, except they also destroy the sound, or I guess they completely dull the sound within a radius, so you could literally drive a car through the building and no one will hear it because that entire area's sound is just eliminated. Um, so they'll just get in there, save the private visitor, then go after the hostage rescue truck. I'm gonna be honest. Going through most of this mission is basically the exact same. It's not really that difficult. They'll just run through most of the overpass. I guess Grayson gets access to his weapons now because he's just part of the the Alice Corporation. But he's just gonna be shooting like fucking.
So you don't think
Well, go ahead.
their tools are gonna make this easier or harder, just as easy as it was for the original guy?
Yeah, because it's like if you've seen most of the Bulletstorm weapons, they're usually just like standard assault rifle, shotgun, sniper rifle. They do have some special features, but some of them are just like the flail chain is like it's an explosive chain where you shoot it at someone and it wraps around their body. You can detonate it at any time. That's great, but then its unique version is just like a chain that splits through people's bodies. It's the same thing, it's just sharper. Though the actual infantry hot shot weapon, like the charge shot, is really good because it revs up the rifle and makes it fire with the force of 100 rounds at once, which just burns the bones off of somebody's body, or it burns the skins off their body, and leaves only their skeleton behind.
That
So
sounds pretty radical.
I guess if he runs into a situation where there's a heavy exo or something, he can just like turn them into a fucking skelly or leash them. Nothing stopping him from grabbing a character midair, because he can technically counter the exos. If they jump midair, he can grab them midair with the leash and just toss them over his shoulder into the middle of a freeway and let them get hit with a car or something. Or thump them. He literally has the anti-exo answer. I will also be saying that for this setup, I think it will be fair due to ammunition concerns that he is going to get access to, along with his squad, are going to access to the Confederation pods from the Bulletstorm game, and they'll basically be able to replenish their ammo if they kill enemies skillfully, just like they did in the previous game, because the actual skill shot system is canon. So they'll just do what they were already doing to begin with, kicking people into the air, shooting them midair, throwing them over their stuff, blowing up explosive canisters next to their bodies. Like there's plenty of stuff in COD where you would actually be able to use stuff in your environment to kill people. It's just that there are no gameplay mechanics to use it, but the environment definitely has enough stuff like cars that you could blow up. There's enough stuff to where you could be creative. Anyway, he's gonna get through this mission, no problem. Traffic is easy. That's the name of the mission. Fission is gonna be basically the same thing. It's just going after a reactor and trying to escape this power plant. But just like in the previous mission, you're given intel from the engineer that you pulled out of the traffic mission, who is basically an engineer from the summit that knows how to work a reactor, and he tells you this information. You go into the station, you try to stop the reactor core from melting down. It doesn't work, and then it ends up going off anyway, and then ends up exploding everywhere and killing a bunch of your soldiers, and then also killing like these attacks happen all over the world. So you, even though you succeed in like finishing the fission mission, you would like you still failed technically. You're supposed to. And then going through Aftermath, honestly, Aftermath is pretty much the same thing. Like you and I guess Grayson and Ishii are just gonna go straight through like a giant's.
Man, you really just struggle to remember him, don't you?
I don't know why his name is so difficult to remember.
It's the most
I
unique
can even
name in the
remember
crew.
Serrano's name. This is like the third time now. Like no other character. I can remember every other character in the scenario, but Ishii.
Poor Ishii.
Um. So after the Atlas reactor situation, there's like a 5 year time skip, and then they're just like basically chilling inside of a camp and providing resources and food to people. You go outside of this camp, out of this refugee camp, to find one doctor that's responsible for this. What does it say? Dr. Denoy. The guy that's, for what I understand, he's not even related to the reactor. Whatever. You go find him. Again, you just have to sneak your way through the most of these areas. Uh, like most of these missions, again, no exos, really just like some soldiers with Dobermans. You mostly have stealth vehicles and stealth equipment. I guess you'll run into the Sentinels, but that's like it's not really that relevant. The campaign's only really going to get interesting once you get to Manhunt, which is when you start going after Hades after you find the information from Dr. Denoy. And after that point, you go to the safe house, take out the guards in the safe house at what is it? It's like some area. I don't remember where it is, but you basically take over this Wasp equipment drone, use it to fly through the air until you get to the building where the Hades meeting is taking place, and then you sweep the building, kill everyone inside until you get to Hades. Now, Ishii's in the room. He could technically die here, but I think in the campaign, one of the companions actually, like when they realize that like the Hades in the room that they killed is not the real Hades, and that he's rigged with a bomb, he just jumps on top of the body. So I don't see any reason why I wouldn't do that here. But I mean, I guess if like Ishii's feeling more manly, he can jump on top of the bomb and bye bye Ishii.
Do you just want to get
Really
rid of
comes
this
down to it.
character that badly?
No, it's not. It's not that. It's just like I'm just wondering if that would be in character for him,
To
because
blow
technically
himself
he is
up?
willing to. Well, no, to give himself up for his comrades.
If you put your body on a grenade, it doesn't really do much, right?
That depends on the angle. Well, also this was not a grenade. This is a wired charge.
No, I understand that, but I hope you can understand that the same logic applies here.
If you put yourself on top of a grenade, that does take care of a significant chunk of the shrapnel.
Yeah, that's all it does. Take care of the shrapnel, not the explosion. Well, what's the explosion looking like here? Really small or what?
Like imagine all the windows in the room are getting blown out, along with some of the chairs. And honestly, I'm surprised Gideon even survived that. Even
Mangler,
the guy's body,
Mangler, for fuck's sake. The World Trade Center level explosion is not something you can stop with your body.
bro. Like if I were to show you a screenshot of what this looks like in this screen, I'm still wondering how the fuck did he stop that with his body? Like, oh god, this is silly.
All right. So they survive an explosion that they shouldn't have survived.
I mean, they do in the game, but if we're being honest, they should have been dead.
All right.
Um,
So they survive and we move forward. Or do so because the main character survived. I think it's
well,
fair to
it's the main
say.
character's not there. The main character's not there, but Ishii, the guy Ishii's replacing, being Gideon, is he's in the room when it's
Okay.
happening.
Okay, but someone does survive then. They don't just all die in this explosion
No,
originally?
they
Okay.
don't all die.
If someone survives I don't think we take a life from them, but that's only because they survive within the main story concept or context.
Yes. And then you basically run through the area after the wasp gets downed. Um, Honestly, you just try to run through the city to rendezvous with a position where you can cut off Hades. You put a glancing charge in the ground, activate it when Hades' convoy comes by. It sends him flying through the streets. You just gun down the rest of his soldiers and you pull him out of the car. Gets well, actually, in this case, there's a convoy that comes running around the sides to intercept you, right?
All
But
right.
that doesn't really work here because Grayson has the leash, so he's just gonna pull the driver out of the seat, or fire a. Actually, he might just fire his drill weapon. He has a drill weapon that can literally like rocket propel a steel drill through an air, so it'll just go through the driver's seat and pull him the fuck out of the vehicle. So the car is not going to end up pinning him against the wall, which means Hades is basically going to be captured immediately. Well, actually, no, they're just going to kill him, technically, because that's their goal. um, and then, well, actually, the scenario might be very different then,
All right. So
because if
they kill Hades by the sound of it.
well, so the thing is that depending on how they kill him, because in the main campaign, you were just going to pull him out of there and then I guess kill him, but like the car interrupts you and he starts fighting with Alona, who would just be Trishka in this case. But the problem is that like then you try to pull the car off. He tries to stab you. He stabs your prosthetic arm. You pull it out. You pull the knife out of your prosthetic arm and then slice him across the neck. And then he slowly like obviously like passes out, and you assume like, oh, he bled out. But then he kind of fakes his death. He wakes up and he's like, Irons know he knows Irons knows, and he gives you a data pad right before he dies. But I don't think that's going to happen here because I'm pretty sure he's just going to get a bullet to the head, which means they're not getting the data pad.
Which
That's pretty
means
significant. Well, do you know the reason why you leave the Atlas Corporation in the campaign?
because the data pad reveals like some weapon, I'm assuming.
It reveals that Irons knew about the reactor attacks and he basically let it happen so that Atlas could get contracts all over the world and so they could change policy. That's how he ends up being revealed to be the main bad guy of the game. But that only happens because Hades gives you the uh, a code that's encrypted in Atlas's own algorithm, and that only happens that way because he's alive long enough to give it to you. But if you shoot him in the head, he's not going to give you the code because he'll be dead.
And without the code, you don't find out he's a villain, and then you
You don't
just
find it as yeah. So they're just gonna go back to base, and then the same mission happened. Like the Utopia mission still happens. It's that in the middle of the Utopia mission, you're in the process of celebrating, just standing guard, and Alona calls you down to a maintenance room to discuss the findings. You don't know what she's asking you about. She pulls you down there and starts playing the recording. It's just in this case, it would be Trishka finding it out because Trishka's on the mission with Grayson. Um, but like that never happens. So this is a very different campaign now. Basically, the Sentinel mission never happens because the Sentinels never show up to break you out. You're, I mean,
it really just sounds like you think like the story's over at this point because there's no.
so it's not over, but like it takes a very different turn. So Cormac and Knox are still part of the Sentinel group. They would still be moving on a lot of their missions. It's just they don't have you with them. They wanted to recruit you because they've been watching you for a while, but like that doesn't really happen.
No, they can't.
So technically, while their Sentinel mission does still happen, while they still go to Iron's private estate to basically um I think he can do his private estate to basically put some tracking drones on one of his ships that gets shot down over the Antarctic. Gideon, according to the game, basically gets sent in there, so we can actually argue the main protagonists are sent to Antarctica, that are deployed there via the Atlas like orbital platform. They're going to show up on the battlefield and they're just going to kill Nox and Cormac. So they're going to kill the other main characters in Atlas and God. And yes, with their leashes, they are going to absolutely dominate. Well, actually, I don't think Trishka has her leash anymore, but like Grayson is gonna fucking dominate the Sentinel forces down there. They are gonna get deleted because they have no reason to assume that like you know Irons is doing anything wrong. So they're just gonna assume they're protecting Atlas property. So the biolab mission's never gonna happen because Cormac and Nox are gonna be dead. Collapse will probably still happen. So they're basically going to attack the United States Golden Gate Bridge, except you're going to be on the side of the attackers, blowing up a carrier ship. Yeah, this is a very different campaign than I remember. And then Throttle still happen. Well, actually, no, Throttle might not happen unless they get a different pilot in there. So we're just gonna have some unnamed randos, like randoms, flying their jets through the after you attack the United States, Irons basically goes in public to the United Nations and is like, why did I attack the United States? Well, because I've sent soldiers to die in your wars, so I feel uniquely qualified to tell you your wars don't work. They're not how they should be done. What I am proposing is an end to all wars. And he basically declares war on the world. And he sets himself up in New Baghdad, and they basically send like soldiers after him.
Wait. You're telling me the main antagonist of the game is just a guy who wants to end all wars?
Well, his specific problem is that he wants revenge against the United States, specifically that in the military-industrial complex for like killing his son through their incompetence.
That seems like a.
Though he,
Why is he the antagonist again? Oh wait, it's a Call of Duty game. That's why he's the antagonist.
well, he honestly, if you read a lot of his intel things, he does not seem like that bad of a guy. He's just really fucking pissed off. Because after, well, okay, so he's the antagonist mainly because he's responsible for the deaths of like thousands and thousands of people during the reactor missions because he lets that happen.
That's fine.
But he also does that. He does that specifically so that he can get, so that the world becomes reliant on Atlas. Because after that happens, the world basically starts opening up contracts and security contracts at Atlas. They become comfortable getting over most of their infrastructure, like their security plans, literally anything to Atlas. Atlas can beef up their.
Mangler, leave and rejoin. Mangler,
Remember,
leave
Atari in the world.
Leave and rejoin. Welcome back.
I actually heard that.
Fuck. Hang on. Hang on. All right. Speak now?
Yes.
Okay, that's better. All right, go ahead.
So the Atlas military in Advanced Warfare has the largest standing military in the entire world. Their military is superior to the United States. They're top dog.
That's a funny joke.
Well, that was before the entire world offered up security contracts to them during the reactor mission. Afterwards, they'd be even bigger because they would have had more recruitment and more people and way more resources because they're also much, much wealthier. So at this point, the Sentinel Defense Force doesn't have nearly enough to deal with them, even though they do say the entire Western world unifies against Atlas, but I'm just going to be honest, that means literally nothing because his Baghdad is reinforced like a motherfucker. There's anti-air devices all over the thing. So what this is going to look like is they're just going to send waves and waves and waves of Marines, except Grayson is now on the field with Trishka and Ishii, and they get access to their full arsenal, inventory, and everything. So they're just going to be taking pot shots. They're just going to be blowing soldiers away left and right. And then when they start sending an overwhelming amount of Marines, Jonathan Ayers is going to order the deploying of Manticore, and the same thing's going to happen in this scenario that happened in the main game. You're going to walk through the streets as a giant bioweapon deployed kills all of your any of your. Wait, can you hear me?
You cut out a little bit there. I heard bioweapon deployed.
So Manticore is a bioweapon that is
Yes,
deployed
I think I've heard that
in the
before.
campaign,
Yes.
and it doesn't affect you in the campaign, even though you're attacking Atlas, because your name is registered in the Atlas database. In this circumstance, it's also still registered in the Atlas database, except they're fighting on the side of Atlas. So it's going to affect them the same way that it affects their soldiers. And that is to say, not at all. They're going to be walking through a battlefield while their enemies are just dying left and right, and they're completely untouched. Like, let me be clear about this. In this campaign, Atlas does not lose. In fact, the end of the campaign makes it very clear the fight has only just begun. Atlas is not done yet. Jonathan Irons even says, like, what I've started does not end with me. And in this scenario, he actually has the main protagonist helping him. So there is basically no reason for them to, like, I mean, maybe in character, Grayson Hunt would be like, yeah, I'm going to be against you. But he doesn't know that Jonathan Irons was against this. He just assumes that, like, yeah, Jonathan Irons is, like, trying to change policy of the world through an iron fist.
Well, I was gonna say,
But
like, would anyone really be against the idea? Because you don't know that he's dirty. Would we ever assume that he's a bad guy in this situation if you have no evidence of him being dirty?
I might assume he's super antagonistic and hawkish, and that might get us killed. But I wouldn't assume his motives are necessarily wrong, or that
I'm
what
gonna be
he's doing is
honest.
dirty or dishonest.
I think I'll stick on the side of the guy with the virus that kills everyone on like a cellular level specifically.
Kills everyone on a cellular level, can penetrate chem instantly, had this contact with a single spore fatal, and it can even kill people inside of airship cockpits, which are vacuum sealed.
Yeah, I think I'll side with the guy
Yeah, I
with the bioweapon. That seems like the right call here.
keep in mind he was able to produce this at an industrial scale and had places everywhere. In fact, when you get inside of his base, you find out he was literally going to gas bomb the entire East Coast and kill like 50 million people.
Okay, well that
So,
seems a little more bad. That seems bad.
yeah, but you wouldn't know about that though if you were
Then
working for him.
then we're still fighting.
Yes. So, once honestly, if there never happens, throttle happens, terminus never really happens. So once the end of the throttle mission happens, yeah, we'll just like Atlas's plan succeeds, or he succeeds and manages to bomb the East Coast. And since you survived, um, no lives lost. Um, Bulletstorm, Bulletstorm crew, Grayson, and the rest of his Echo Squad are yeeted out of the universe because they managed to survive the encounter, even though their actions led to the deaths of tens of millions of people.
Seems like a successful mission all
And
across the board.
a lot darker of an ending. Manticore succeeds in launching. Atlas basically takes control of most of the world, like they already were. And
This seems like this seems like a positive ending. I think overall, no more wars. That seems worth a few lives.
60 million innocent dead people.
You can't make an
What was?
omelet. Listen, you can't make an omelet without breaking about 60 million eggs.
Trust me, he wouldn't have even needed to bomb that. He could have just bombed the people that were attacking him, and that would have been enough of a point. He could have threatened to bomb, and that would have been like people would have believed him.
No,
But he's like, no, I'm
no,
just gonna
no, Mangler.
on the East Coast.
Sometimes you have to do what you gotta do, and sometimes that includes getting rid of New Jersey.
Well, honestly, yeah. I mean that's where it was like easy difficulty. I don't think they even need the Confederate stuff because I didn't really get to go over a lot of Grayson's weapons, but like, well, I guess a lot of them aren't really that like super special.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like,
yeah. But
yeah.
my double barrel shotgun is still a double barrel shotgun, regardless of what universe I'm in.
Well, he did have a special feature for his sniper rifle, but he couldn't use it because he's not fast enough to be able to use it. It's a sniper rifle that basically allows you to like view a radio wave signal to the bullets, so
you can angle the bullet midair as it's traveling. But for that to work, you would have to be able to perceive the bullet moving that quickly. And that only works because Grayson's actually that fast in his own game, but that would not be the case here. So that feature would be completely useless.
All right. Rare successful protagonist swap. It seems that overall our crew did a successful job of making sure the right people ended up in charge. So, with that said, thank you guys for your time as always. Unless you'd like to say anything else.
No, yeah, successful mission. 20 million, 60 million people killed.
Uh, you know, those are casualty numbers I can live with. So thank you guys for your time as always. Have a nice day. I'll see you guys on the next stream or video. Take care, everybody.